Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Reddit Regular Revenge, where the revenges are a bit more than petty but not quite pro-revenge, but are still satisfying nonetheless. In this episode, you'll hear about employees getting back at managers, how a classmate gets back at a bully with a cell phone, a Disneyland ticket scammer, and a credit card thief. I hope you stay for these stories today, and subscribe for future videos. This one's titled, City Bus Driver Stopped at Burger King. He couldn't have it his way. Graduate school, in a Midwest college town, winter 1980. I usually walked half a mile from my apartment to the shared office on campus. On the coldest mornings, I used the bus stops in front of both buildings. I was almost always the lone passenger on the earliest Sunday bus. One day, a driver new to the route double parks in front of Burger King, then goes in. It's BK, so he had to wait, and so did I. After the second time of him making me wait and wasting my time, I decided he deserved a little revenge. From then on, my day pack contained a windbreaker and a wool cap that were different colors than what I was wearing. Next time he stopped, he left the bus the same way. Out the door, walked around to the driver's side, reached through a small window to grab the handle to close the door, then into BK, leaving the small window open. I closed and latched the small window, walked to an emergency exit window over one of the rear tires, went through, using the tire as a step onto the empty street, ducked around the first corner, put on my windbreaker and changed caps. I then returned to the street, walked towards my office, checking occasionally for his exit from BK. He couldn't open the small window. I watched long enough to conclude that he couldn't get into the bus. I'll bet he had some explaining to do. Never saw him again. This one's titled, Jealous and Unstable Manager Gets Mad When I Quit. I was a copier repair guy for a local shop. My manager was a bipolar nutjob who snapped on me one day out of the blue. He marched me into the owner's office and swore at me, called me a loser, the worst tech he's ever met, etc. He tried to show proof that I didn't initialize the developer on a machine, but I had proof that I did and made him look stupid, which infuriated him. That day, I applied to the local trade college for IT. That was a waste of time and money, but I got a piece of paper that landed me a job in the IT field and a rewarding career. It took about 15 months, but the day I walked in and informed him of my 2 weeks notice was the ultimate revenge. It was even sweeter because the day before, this manager was lamenting that he really wished he had a job in IT. The look on his face when I told him I was quitting to be an IT guy, I'll never forget it. He walked into his office, slammed the door, and didn't come out for hours. This one's titled, Disneyland Scam. My girlfriend was going to Dapper Day at Disney with some friends. I didn't want to go, mostly because I couldn't until 6 p.m. However, she kept bringing it up, so I decided I was going to surprise her and just show up later that evening. I didn't want to pay full price for a ticket that I'd only be using for a couple hours, so I headed to Craigslist. Never had a bad experience on there, said no one ever. I find a legitimate seller willing to meet at the park. In fact, he's an employee, and I'm getting a pretty good deal. Nothing about this whole transaction seems suspicious, except the last minute he couldn't meet at the park, so I met at his house. So, I get to the park, scan the ticket to get in, and a giant red light goes off on the machine. A Disney employee is like, "This ticket has been used already." I'm pissed, so I call the guy, which he told me to do if I had any troubles. No response. Surprise, surprise. In the end, I buy a ticket to get in. It was there at the happiest place on earth that I hatched my revenge. I decided to put out a Craigslist ad of my own. I gave the name of the guy who sold me the ticket, along with his phone number and address. The ad was along the lines of, male seeking male, looking for fun. I said I worked at Disney, gave my favorite character and movie too. I also said what I'm into, like really into, and to send me pics of what you're packing. I refreshed that ad every month for 3 months. This one's titled, Almost Make Me Infertile? I'll Ruin Your Relationships. A long time ago, I was a young man in an all-boys secondary school. I was about 14 for any international readers, and my friends and I were regularly bullied by a large group of older guys. Being typical nerdy boys, we were prime candidates for bullying. The only saving grace was that we were quite a large group ourselves, so no one person was targeted more than any other. Unfortunately, that didn't matter, as the bullying was brutal. On our school grounds, there was a small cabin that belonged to the local Boy Scouts that we used to hang around on our lunch break. One day, we had a run-in with the bullies when they tried to steal our football. For daring to not hand it over, I was singled out for punishment. So I was grabbed by 4 of them, each one grabbing an arm and a leg, and carried around the corner to a small courtyard with a flagpole in the middle. After a few punches for struggling, I was swung backwards and forwards a few times before being swung legs apart and full force into the pole. Any attempts to describe how painful that was wouldn't do it justice. Thankfully, one of my friends had made a run for a teacher, and they were spotted coming towards the group by the lookout before they had a chance to take another swing, and they dropped me. I was carried to the school office, nauseous and in tears, and my mom was called. She found me with an ice pack between my legs and ghoulies the size of oranges. As she was talking to the receptionist and teacher, my friends ran up to me and passed me a mobile phone. I was confused as I didn't own one, and it was at a time where they weren't really as common as they are now, and they didn't even have games on them yet. I looked at my friend and asked who it was. He told me one of the bullies had dropped it as they ran off, and he thought I should have it as a small way of getting back at him. I took the phone and left with my mom, and I'd forgotten about the phone in my blazer pocket until I heard it go off. I took it out and saw that he'd received a text message from his girlfriend. This was before phones had sophisticated locks, and the bully hadn't set a passcode. I had no idea which bully had owned the phone, but I had his name now at least. I decided to mess with him. I was off school the next day, but when I went back in, I talked to my friends about it, and we came up with a plan. One of my friends with a mobile phone was going to message him, pretending to be a guy he'd met recently, and we were going to make it look like he'd been having a relationship with him and meeting in secret. We carried on sending messages for the rest of the week, and I was also replying to his girlfriend, although I deliberately made my replies shorter and less intimate than they had been before. I'd arranged for a bully to meet his girlfriend in the local town that Saturday, but was planning to stand her up, obviously, while simultaneously having my friend text the phone about ditching her to go over to his place instead. I replied, agreeing, and said I'd tell her I couldn't make it. I didn't. I'd waited in town where we were supposed to meet, and saw a girl walk up and wait for a bit. She then got out her phone and typed a text. The phone went off in my pocket. I left it alone. She waited a few more minutes, and then texted me again. This time, I walked around the corner out of sight, and messaged her back, asking who this was. She flipped out and shouted at me for messing her around. I told her that I'd found this phone on the floor of the bus station, and if she knew who the owner was, I'd come give it to her so she could give it back to the owner if she was nearby. She told me where she was, and I waited 5 minutes before walking around the corner and looking around for her. Eventually, through texting, we found each other, and I gave her the phone. She thanked me, and we went our separate ways. On Monday, I told my friends that we'd pulled it off, and we just had to wait to see what happened. It wasn't long into the week when gossip started spreading through the school. The bully's girlfriend had read his messages and had dumped him for having a gay affair. On top of that, she'd done it by going to his house on Saturday and calling him out in front of his parents, who it turns out were not fans of that sort of thing at all. When he denied it, she pulled out the phone and read out message after message. His claims of losing it over a week ago were ignored, and I was not suspected. In response, his parents pretty much disowned him, and he was only saved by his uncle, who was a little more understanding. He lost contact with a lot of his friends as his uncle's house was a lot further away. As far as I know, his parents never took him back, and he moved to London to go to university to escape his reputation at home. I had only expected to break him and his girlfriend up, but that was an unexpected bonus. I'd say it went too far, but having your nuts smashed off a flagpole tends to harden you for the plight of your bully. This one's titled, Steal My Credit Card? My wife will go Liam Neeson on your ass. ProRevenge didn't think I was cool enough to play with them. This is literally wrapping up as I type this. Earlier today, I got a text from one of my credit card companies questioning a few charges. I was in meetings and coincidentally left my wallet at home today, so I shot my wife a text and asked her to care for it. She called the credit card company, but they wouldn't talk to her, which made no fucking sense since it was her card that got skimmed anyhow because it was my account. So, she did a little sleuthing. A quick look online showed a pending hotel charged, which included a location number, so she called the corporate office and found out that it was in Chino, California, and got a local phone number. She called up the hotel and talked to the manager, explaining that our credit card was being used there, but we could assure them that we were across the country. Like a fucking boss, the hotel manager conferences up the local police department who says, "On our way." She waited about 2 hours, then called the hotel back to inquire, and the comment was, "The police department has several suspects in custody. and will be calling you later for additional information. Update: 5 people in custody. Felony charges. God damn. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Reddit Regular Revenge. That story with the bully and the cell phone was more on the pro-revenge side in my opinion. If you happen to miss the last episode of Regular Revenge, it's right here. See you guys in the next one.